This is the May 13th, 2024 caucus meeting of the City of Crescent Springs. I think the city administrator will cover anything that I've got right now, with the exception of I was at the dedication over the weekend of the Charters of Freedom up in the park. It was done very nicely, and I appreciate Councilmember Bell Smith and Councilmember McGowan coming and being there and participating. They did a very nice presentation. Had these little cannons that shot off. It made a very loud noise and scared a lot of people, even though we knew it was coming. So it was fun. That's all I have. Mr. Daly?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few items to discuss in my report. The first is the Kenton County Planning Commission public hearing last week while I was gone on May 2nd took place. That case was heard by the Planning Commission and was accepted by the Planning Commission. It was a unanimous vote in favor. Director Miller and Mr. Baker representing Crescent Springs at the hearing since I was unavailable. Board of Adjustments hearing related to the same group, Midland. It's going to be heard next week, Tuesday, May 21st at 6 p.m. And there's
Thursday the 23rd.
They moved to Thursday.
That's right. Thursday. Thank you, guys.
It's always on Tuesday.
Yes. The variances are listed there. We discussed this at the last meeting. I have them listed on what they are basically asking for. The budget process, we're right in line to lead us into the May 28th meeting for the first reading. And obviously we'll have the second reading in June. C21, our next virtual meeting will be Wednesday, May 22nd at 3 p.m. And lastly, the community cleanup is this Saturday. You have a flyer at the back end of my report. It's 8 to 2 p.m. here at the city building lot. And this is a partnership with Crescent Springs and Villa Hills on this event.
Are you taking all the stuff that they did the last time?
No, just saying, as a reminder, there's no hazardous materials.
Okay.
No paint, no computers, no electronics,
No tires.
no tires.
So we added paper.
Oh, yeah.
Shredded.
We added shredded.
And I have one item off my report, and Councilmember Barclay asked me about this recently regarding a status check on where we were at with the council chambers here and an actual video production upgrade proposal. What you have in your hand is an email that I received from Jay Beckmeyer. This was obviously a contact that Bill directed us to. And basically, it's an email. If you read through it, it will explain different options that we can choose from if we were to try to decide to go forward with it. The one option is kind of risky because it's a wireless process, and obviously with the wireless process, there's a chance that the system could go down, and that is not what we want. We need to have an extremely reliable system that works pretty much 100%, because like I have said, it cannot be where staff has to worry about this during a meeting, because that's the last thing April needs, and that's the last thing I need. So if it's unreliable, I definitely say we would not go with that. The other option is where you actually hook up everything through a wire system. That would be the more reliable one. So that's something we're looking at.
Are you taking questions or not?
If you have a question.
So I see, so the wire ground, I get the conservatism of that, but the wire ground is $210 to $455. that's for everything you need to buy. What about, even if we went to the high end of that, that's $455. What's the cost to install it and get it set up?
I don't know.
Okay, so this is just equipment cost
Yes,
only.
yes.
Okay. Because I mean, it's one of those things that we've been talking about, and Mark, I think you're on board too, is that what we're doing right now is not cost effective compared to putting something in place months. So I appreciate the legwork, and Bill, thanks for the contact.
Yes.
If you can get us some installation costs.
Yes.
We have is the broadcasting on this budget on a line item? Because we voted on extending the contract, so I'm just looking to see.
I think it's in office, I don't think it's a line item, if I can remember correctly.
What was that, Mark?
I think it's separate.
Okay. I was just trying to isolate it to.
Yeah, but she knows where it's located, I just don't, we haven't seen it separate.
No, it won't be separate.
You tell me how many.
Well, I would think that it would be in 5337.
5337.
Page 2.
On page 3.
5337, right?
Correct. City building and grounds equipment.
Oh, page 2.
It's on page 2 at the bottom of mine.
Yeah, page 2
I'm sorry,
bottom.
I'm looking at a different, I got a smaller one on here. Sorry.
For the next discussion, can we just isolate what the cost for, is it just that? Because this has security cameras and other things in it. Can we
We
isolate?
don't list, not everything we have is listed.
No, he's saying for homework.
For homework.
Actually,
Not on the budget.
5402 is life-size media.
That's outside. What was the question? Where was the funds for the, what he's presenting?
Currently utilized.
How much we're spending for what we do
I'm
today
sorry.
as compared to what this
That's in
solution would be?
contract, that's in the contract
Okay.
services, I'm sorry.
No worries.
It says for last year, at least, council meeting videos, $278.07 per meeting.
Right.
So the equipment's paid off in 2 meetings, and then whatever the would be, I mean, if it's under the cost of the year, I mean, it just pays for itself in the same amount, so. I mean, I think that this is low hanging fruit.
As long as it's reliable. Yes.
It's a real problem if it stops working.
Yes, it really
It's a
is.
severe problem.
Because again, this is gonna come back on staff. We're gonna be the ones operating the
Yeah,
equipment.
but right now, we're using the wireless stuff right now.
I don't know what he's using.
Obviously, you know, but, so, we're already using, like, he doesn't have anything hardwired, so we have somewhere. How does it, like,
He's got wires right
It's
there,
wired
Mark.
to the floor.
Yeah, use the wires for the.
oh, okay. But I mean, it seems like it's cheaper anyway. Right? Like,
I understand cheap, but again, we need reliability.
Yeah.
I agree. I fully agree. The last thing we want to do is transfer one line item and put it on the staff to maintain the rest of it. But if we can have a level of confidence and a level of support from whoever we have to install it to say, hey, this has to work. We test it, it works when we're testing it, and we move forward with it. If it's cost effective. I mean, yeah, I don't want to add more work to everybody else, but I mean, we pay $287 a meeting, every meeting, and we have, what, 12 plus 18 meetings that are broadcast. I mean, you're talking 10 times the cost, well, 8 times the cost. So, each year, and this could end that right now, for all the years. But reliability is paramount, yes.
lastly, a discussion will be coming up regarding medical cannabis. Director Reddy is in the audience and Chief Hall is as well. You all have a file at your desk that has all the information that has been emailed out to you guys, starting on Friday and came out in your council packet on Friday as well. The presentation that Director Reddy will give tonight is in your file as well, but it will also be up here on the screen itself. So please take a look at it, try to understand it. I also sent an email out right before council meeting regarding PDS's GIS team. They created a mapping tool for our city specifically that shows the zoning for Crescent Springs only. It also includes within 1,000 feet buffer requirement from schools and daycares. And from what I can tell, it's mainly up towards the right prior to the overpass. For example, like Ritchie. But April's going to try to bring that up tonight as well, so we can take a look at it as a group. But that's all I have, Mayor.
And out of respect for the director, we will go ahead and let her come up and proceed, and then we'll circle back to whatever we've missed before. I appreciate you. I know that you were out with your son at a tennis match or something, and I appreciate you getting here so timely and helping us out.
Thank you, Mayor, thank you. Yeah, he lost, but that's okay. There's life lessons in losing, so we're good. We're good. Thank you for accommodating me. I appreciate that. My name is Shamili Reddy, and I'm the Executive Director of PDS. And thank you for starting this conversation about medical cannabis. We've been trying to inform our cities about the legislation that was put in place and what your timeline is, what your time frame is, and hopefully get you started on the conversation and help you through the process and where you need to be. I have a short 10-minute presentation, and then I'm happy to answer any questions or any comments or how we may help you after that. So I'll just go through my presentation really quick, and then we'll talk through some other things. As you know, in 2023, the General Assembly legalized medical cannabis. So they put that in place in 2023 with a effective date of January 1st, 2025. Well, this year and last year, I suppose, as they were working through the legislation, they realized that in order to actually start issuing medical cannabis January 1st, they have to have product available and ready to go before that. So they moved up the licensing timeline for cannabis businesses to this year. And I'll go through some of that information as well. So sorry. Let me get this full screen. Okay, so there's basically two sets of regulations that apply to medical cannabis. One is the KRS 218B, which is the state statute that was passed, and then House Bill 829 that was passed in this session that modified some of the requirements of that KRS. And then there are administrative regulations that are promulgated by the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, the Office of Medical Cannabis. So those administrative regulations are still in progress. They have a whole public hearing process for that. And so once that process is complete, we will have additional regulations on medical cannabis. The one thing I do want to point out is that this is very heavily regulated at the state level. So anybody that wants access to medical cannabis has to be a registered card holder. Anybody that wants to prescribe, a physician or an APRN that wants to prescribe medical cannabis has to have a license. Anybody that wants to open a business that sells or cultivates medical cannabis, they have to have a license. So it's very regulated at each step of the way at the state level. So House Bill 829, as I was saying earlier, what it modified is that January 1st, 2025 date. So initially, I think we all thought, okay, we have until January 1st, 2025. Cities have until then to institute any kind of regulations. Well, we still do, thanks to the advocacy of KLC. Even if the state starts issuing licenses this year, as long as the city adopts something, whether you want to prohibit it or allow it, and we'll talk through those options. So long as you take that action by January 1st of 2025, any business that is issued a license this year will still have to meet those requirements. So you can still wait after January 1st, 2025 to take action, but if the cabinet issues a license before then, and you haven't acted on it by January 1st, then that business will be grandfathered in. So I think that's something important to note, which is why we are encouraging our cities to take some action on this issue, just so you're prepared and not reacting to the things that come your way. A couple things in the KRS regarding this use. It cannot be less restrictive than state statute, so if you want to allow medical cannabis and you want to make your requirements more restrictive, you can do that. You can regulate time, place, and manner of these businesses, and obviously you cannot impose undue burden, unreasonable, or impractical requirements on these businesses. So statute does give you the authority to institute certain requirements for cannabis businesses. The one thing to make clear is that you have the ability to regulate the business itself, but you will not have the ability to stop somebody that is prescribed medical cannabis from using it within your city limits. So obviously they go to a physician, they are prescribed medical cannabis, they live in the city of Crescent Springs, they can still use medical cannabis. So your role is limited to allowing a cannabis business or not within the city of Crescent Springs. The other thing to point out, because I hear this a lot, oh my gosh, people are just going to start growing marijuana in their backyards and this is going to become an issue. Well, so the way the statute is written, all cannabis businesses have to be in a completely enclosed building. So even if they are cultivating cannabis, think indoor agriculture, 80 acres, something similar like that, where everything is grown inside, processed inside, produced inside, everything has to be indoors, so nothing allowed outside. So the options that the city has is one, to say yes, we want to allow medical cannabis businesses within Crescent Springs, and we want to adopt some regulations. Great, so you can do that. That's your first option. Your second option is to say no, we don't want to allow any medical cannabis businesses within the city. You can enact an ordinance. Now what that does, based on when you take that action, there is a provision for public petition to basically, I guess, in some ways, appeal that decision of council. So you say no, somebody that lives in the city says, well, we want to see medical cannabis allowed, they can start a petition, get the required signatures, put it on the ballot, and that'll have to be the exact question that is asked in the ballot. And if it passes, then you will have to allow medical cannabis within the city. The third option you have is to say, we don't want to make a decision on this, we want to send it to the voters directly. You can pass a resolution with that specific question again, and just put it directly on the ballot for your residents to vote on it. So those are basically the three options that are available to cities. And one minor note, so let's just say, and there is no talk of this, but if the county goes ahead and votes no in Kent County, the city can still vote yes through an ordinance. So you still reserve the right to say yes. Now, if you look at the options, the ballot provision is only if you vote no. So if you vote yes, nobody from the public can say, well, I want to appeal that decision, I want to put it on the ballot for it to become a no. That is not allowed per state statute. So it's only if you vote no can there be a petition to go to a yes. There's also provisions for a reasonable fee, for you to impose a reasonable fee. A lot of cities have ABC licenses, so it's kind of similar to that. You can impose an additional fee for businesses, cannabis businesses, should you allow them to locate within the city. And there's some language that it cannot exceed the corrections impact. So you have to show the correlation between your fee and what the business is causing in terms of impact to the city. So you can do that if you want. So in terms of zoning, there's 5 different uses as part of medical cannabis. The first one, as I was saying, is cultivation, which is basically indoor agriculture. And that is divided up into 4 tiers. So you can see anywhere from 2,500 square feet to 50,000 square feet. Now, all of this is just the indoor growth area. So you could see offices for the cannabis business. That will be in addition to the square footages that you see here. So this is just the indoor growth area. Again, everything has to be indoors. Nothing is permitted to be grown outside. The second use is processing, which is what we would typically consider as an industrial use. Production is a combination of cultivation and processing. That is also an industrial use. Dispensaries, which is basically a retail type of a use. And safety compliance, we consider it like research and development, lab, to make sure that the cannabis that's produced is actually safe for consumption. So those are the 5 different types of uses. And there is a 1,000-foot buffer requirement from schools and daycares already in the state statute. So these businesses cannot be located within a 1,000-foot buffer from existing schools and daycares.
Is that the school building or school property, if you know?
We have, our GIS has done it from the property line. Another thing to note is that in these first round of licenses, the state has set the number of licenses that they'll issue for each of these uses. And you can see just on the left side, we have a little bit of a timeline. July 1st to August 31st, they will take the applications from businesses. If the number of licenses and the number of applications exceeds that, then they will have a lottery. And then the licenses will be issued after that. So we're probably looking at October before these licenses will be issued. The one thing to note is that dispensaries cannot, even if they get a license, they cannot open to the public prior to January 1st of 2025.
Sorry, just for to be clear, these numbers are statewide. This is not how many are in Kent County. It's statewide how many there will be.
Good point, thank you. That's exactly what I was going to mention next, is that these are statewide licenses, so the numbers are very small, to be honest, statewide. Even the 48 dispensary licenses, those are going to be spread across 11 regions across the state. And from what we understand, that means Kenton County will be getting 1 dispensary in this round of licenses. So they're keeping it very tight right now. Want to wait and see how this process works out. They want to make sure that it's a sustainable model and it's not just free for all around the state. So they're keeping it very tight for sure. And there are some for which they're not even issuing licenses. So the largest cultivator tier, which is tier 4, 50,000 square feet, they're not even going to issue a license in this first round. And the same thing with producer licenses, none issued in this first round. Okay, so considerations for you all. Do you want to permit the use? Do you want to prohibit it? Or do you want to send it to your voters to decide? So those are the 3 options. Time, place, and manner. If you want to allow these uses, how do you want to regulate them? Do you want to institute a local fee? I'm sorry, that shouldn't be a license. It's just a local fee that you would institute in exchange for allowing a business here. And then there are some implications for employee policy too. If you're going to allow the use of medical cannabis by your employees, and how does that affect your employee policy within the city?
For city employees, you mean?
For city employees.
Not for employees who work in the city. This is for employees of the city government.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. Now, there is provision in the state statute that you don't have to change that. You don't have to accommodate for medical cannabis. You can keep your employer policy exactly the way it is right now, but if you want to consider it, then you can. So that's the presentation, just a very brief overview. There's a lot to this legislation, so I'm happy to answer any questions, and then we can maybe pull up the map and I can show you areas of the city where this would even be allowed should you choose to do that.
I have a question back on slide 5, the local government options. If the county votes no, the city can still vote yes through ordinance, enact resolution on the ballot. So if Kenton County comes down and says, no, we're not doing it, then an issue has to go on the ballot for the citizens to vote to put it in place, or is it still this body's determination on option one?
So if the county votes no, you can still vote yes. You can, this council can come back and say, we want to allow cannabis within the city limits, so you can take action to allow it within the city of Pleasant Springs.
And what does that look like?
Yeah, it's the same decision tree, it's just you don't have to pay, you don't have to follow suit.
I'm getting, okay.
Right, am I missing, like, it's the same decision tree, you still have to.
Same decision.
I get how that works in decision, I'm just wondering how it works in practice, because the county's saying no, which means that then all of a sudden you've got businesses going, well, I can't do anything with cannabis in Kenton County, so then what we're doing, it's kind of, stifled anyway, so it's just.
No, you still have the authority to allow it within the city of Pleasant Springs, so you can turn right around and say, we don't agree with the county decision, we want to allow medical cannabis within the city limits, and you can do that.
Would the county vote for unless we cover the unincorporated areas? Am I correct in understanding that?
I guess it could go both ways. To be honest, we haven't even talked about the option of the county doing anything countywide, because we know there are a lot of sentiments around this within each of our cities. So we have not even talked to the county about doing anything countywide, and they have not expressed any interest in doing anything
Yeah, it
countywide.
sounds like they're allowing them to county anyway, so wouldn't that by default be unincorporated isn't covered? So that means it's not in a county, right? Or is it just city?
No.
It's always city.
Unincorporated area is within, is under the purview of Kent County.
Pee-wee's is unincorporated county.
I understand, yeah, okay.
So that's what I'm not 100% sure about, is if they did decide to take some action, would it be incorporated and unincorporated, or would it just be unincorporated areas? I'm happy to find that out, but again, as I said, to be honest, there's no conversation at this point in time of doing anything countywide.
And it doesn't, we don't have any effect on unincorporated anyways.
Anyway, yes.
And if the sky isn't falling, then it's just not falling,
Right.
so it's fine. I was just wondering.
And do I understand correctly that Kentucky is like probably the most, among the states that have legalized medical marijuana, we have the most restrictive, at this point at least, in terms of.
I'm sorry, I'm not the best person to
All right.
answer that question. Now, I have heard that.
Yeah.
It is extremely regulated at the state level.
Yes.
Just a ton of requirements that anybody touching cannabis, there is just a lot to go through. And I've even heard that if something goes wrong in the process, they will be able to trace it back to the plant from which the cannabis was produced. So now,
Right.
mixed emotions about that everything can be traced, but since this is the first round, I think they're trying to make it as safe as possible.
Yeah.
Well, I get that, but they also do the same thing with shellfish, like you could trace every shrimp back to the sea, like you have to hold on to the labels of shrimp cases at restaurants for X amount of time.
Yeah, the only thing I would say really more to this council than you, Director Reddy, is, so Kentucky is probably among the most restrictive in the country in terms of medical cannabis being legalized. Kenton County itself is only going to get one license at this point, and we are one small fry in Kenton County. So I think for this council to spend too much time crafting very unique and new regulations and ordinances would be a little bit of an overkill, because the odds of the license, at least in this first round, even being allocated to us is quite slim.
And for my edification, the dispensary and retail store selling of anything else are equal, correct? They're the same thing. Any place where a cardholder can go in and walk out with medical marijuana is a dispensary.
Yes, if you
Okay.
have a license to dispense medical cannabis. Now, it cannot be, so one of the questions I asked was, can medical cannabis be sold in a Walgreens? And the answer was no, because cannabis has to be a standalone operation. It cannot be mixed in with, I guess, other prescriptions and household items and cosmetics and different things like that. It has to be a standalone business. And in other states where this has been legalized, those businesses aren't, Walgreens and CVS are not getting into the cannabis business because it's regulated at the federal level too. So they're just not getting into that business.
And just I mean, it's not that important, but how are the 48 districts, you said 11 districts, like, I wonder Kenton County versus Jefferson County, like how, you know, down where Louisville is, like how many they're getting as opposed to if there's a roadmap to release more, I mean,
Sorry, I don't know if you even know that, but the guy who's running the statewide medical marijuana program called me because we went to high school together, and he said Jefferson County gets 2, Fayette County gets 2, and the other 44 are split sort of evenly geographically. Is what he told me. He said,
Yeah, that sounds right, yeah. Yeah, and our region is actually the 8 county region, it's not even Boone, Kent, and Campbell, it's 8 counties.
For that
Do we get 1 for the region or 1, like, isn't there?
I believe it's 11 for the region.
11 for the region.
11 for the region, 1 for Kent County.
Right.
Yeah. But good
Sorry.
point about,
Can
good
we-
point of, I'm sorry.
sorry, I just got confused, I thought I was tracking. There's 11 regions or there's 11 dispensaries for the region and the region is 8 counties, can you, sorry, get the
There's 11 regions around the
Okay.
state, and I believe there were 11 licenses for our region, but I could be wrong on that. It may be a lower number, it may be a lower.
Yeah, if
number.
we had 11 for our region, I would think Kenton would probably get 2, because we're the biggest, we're one of the biggest, but either way, it's gonna be 1.
Bill, I think your point is spot on, going crazy over this one, there's 1 license, and it's probably gonna go to a different area.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
It is, yeah, I agree.
Even if you decide to allow it, we are asking you to keep the regulations to a bare minimum. And most of the uses are industrial type uses, they're very similar, they're indoors, they're no different than manufacturing, so we're recommending keeping it very high level, allowing it in industrial zones. And then your dispensaries, allow them just like you would a pharmacy in a retail zone. So we're not promoting that you go the conditional use process where it goes to the Board of Adjustment and they decide, or put any additional regulations on this at this time. For the very reason that at this point, very, very minimal licenses that will be issued. If you even want to allow it, obviously you have the authority to prohibit it if you want it.
Bill, maybe this is a question for you, but with it being reclassed from Schedule 1 down to Schedule
Yeah.
3, does that loosen and open?
That's a good question. My conversation with him was before that happened, and so I don't know the answer to that. What was interesting about our conversation was that he was saying the reason the states have been so tightly regulating this is because these businesses are not allowed to have federal bankruptcy protection. So the states are like, don't let these businesses fail because a lot of vendors are going to be out. Now with that changing, I bet the answer is they are. But I don't know how that affects the regulations specifically. Because federally, medical marijuana is becoming
Marijuana in general is going from
Yeah.
a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3.
right.
Oh, wait.
As someone who knows something about bankruptcy,
Like a week or 2 ago. Very recent.
across the country, even in states where it is authorized legal, and you don't need a license or medical license for casual use. Those who are associated with some association with the marijuana business and who want to take advantage of bankruptcy laws are almost universally denied.
Right.
Now, the fact that it's gone from Tier 1 to Tier 3 doesn't necessarily mean that the bankruptcy law or the view of bankruptcy law will change. It might, but I have not heard anything from anyone either in the official bankruptcy, the U.S. Trustees Program, or the Attorney General's office in general about that. Just to let you know.
One more question. So it looks like you provided here one sample ordinance, which would be prohibiting it, and then one sample resolution, which would be putting it to a ballot. Is there no sample for the yes, for the council says yes?
If you want to go the yes route, there's a couple more things that we have to do. We have to identify the zones in which you want to allow it.
Okay.
And we will come back to you with a sample text amendment, so you have that ready to go. But we always like to start with, give us some direction. If you want to just prohibit it, then let's not go through that exercise. But if you want to consider it, then we're happy to look at your zones, assuming you don't want to allow it in your residential zones, just keep it to your industrial and your retail zones. We're happy to look at the map, come up with the text and develop all that.
Director, going ballot question, for option 3 on ballot to poll the public, what's the timeline? What does that look like? I mean, do we need that on the ballot by, 6/4, or do we need it, when is that?
Thank you for asking that question. So there is a timeline included in your packet. The absolute deadline by when the petition has to be submitted and verified by the clerk, county clerk, is August 13th.
August 13th?
August 13th is the drop dead date by when the clerk has to certify that all the signatures are verified and this can go on the ballot. So really, if somebody is working through the process, they need to start soon to get the signatures and work through that entire process.
How many signatures does it need?
I believe it is 10% of the registered voters.
While she's looking that up, do we know how many registered voters we have in the city?
Tom, I do not.
I mean, I can tell you how many showed up, about 700.
I know, right?
So you have to figure turnouts in those off-year elections.
That'd be like 20, I mean, that's 15% of the electorate.
Yeah,
You're gonna figure probably 40 or 50 are registered, whether they show up or not. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking like probably 2,000 or 3,000 would be the.
I mean, we're what, 4,400 people?
Around that, I'd say mid 2000s.
We need 2,000 people.
10%.
Well, so we need 200 people. Okay.
I'd like to ask one question.
Yes, please.
First, let me thank you and Mr. Tyson for this wonderful memorandum you sent out a couple weeks ago. You can extend my appreciation to Mr. Tyson, who's an old classmate of mine, by the way. But the emphasis is on word old. You can tell him to say.
That I will be sure to share.
You had talked about enhanced fees for a second, and are you aware, I don't expect you to be a revenue expert by any stretch, are you aware of any process that we would have to do? Because could we raise, just for cannabis, for example, gross receipts tax, or do we have to have some study by Chief Hall about enhanced police cost with the result of this? Is there any direction given that you're aware of that we could turn to review?
I am not aware. All I know is the language that's included in the legislation that says that it has to correlate to the impact. So I'm sure we will be seeing some pretty creative use of that language with the cities that will institute a local fee of some sort.
Would it be safe just to line it with ABC? I mean, liquor licenses, I mean.
I don't know that we can do that. I mean, this is all virgin area. And
They don't like uncharted waters.
It almost sounds like it would correlate with the alcohol regulatory fees, which we do not collect. And
Yeah, this is only if we get the, like, we don't have to, like, say we say yes, we're gonna be asked, we have to pay this for other, what do you think, or wait till we even see if we get it?
right, but not a regulatory fee.
You don't have to institute the fee right away. You can always do it later too.
Yeah, I mean, right, but if we don't get any, we can't cause sticker tweets saying how much this would cost if we don't have them. So it'd almost be like, see what the impact is, and then they assess the fee if the out there.
But you'd have to get a comment.
Right, no, I mean, whether it's 26, 27, 28, or on
we'd at least get the gross receipts tax, and of course, for employees, there's withholding and stuff.
Yeah.
Those don't change, because that's what we charge everybody.
That is correct. I just want to quickly point to this map. So this shows the, zoom in just a little bit, so you can see the areas where this could potentially be allowed. Obviously, if you remove all the residential zones from the discussion, then you're essentially looking at the Terry Lane, Ritchie Avenue area where there's a little bit of industrial, and then you have Clock Tower, which is your mixed land use. You could potentially allow some retail there. But again, very limited opportunities for the city of Crescent Springs because of all the buffers that have to, that we need to stay out of for these businesses.
So if it reaches into the, I see IP1, that's the industrial, is that right?
That's right.
Yes. Which is the storage facility.
Yes, and the garage door company and then that along Ritchie.
Yes.
That's back. What is the
storage
brown
facility?
circle?
What's the IDs?
Those are, so one is daycare and one is school.
Can't be within 1,000 items.
They cannot be.
Right,
within-
yeah, I was just wondering what the circle was, that's all.
Let's
I don't
click
know
on
if you
that
can pass the
page.
background test, but.
And so I saw also 1,000 feet of a park.
So we just gave a couple additional, again, we're not promoting it, but
Okay.
there are some cities that do have additional buffer requirements around parks, libraries and things like that. In Cincinnati, you can choose to do that if you want, but again, you're already so limited in this space that this would be allowed anyway.
So would it be out of order, probably more of a question for council, but to ask PDS to draw up a sample ordinance for Crescent Springs using our zoning specifically? I think there's enough interest by this council in permitting it just based on the tenor of the questions. But if that's a huge time consuming thing, then
Not at all, we're happy to look at this specific corridor. You can see that little area where it will even be permitted. We can take a look at that and come back to you with a, normally what we do is for the cities that do want to allow it, we'll come back to you and show you the specific areas where this will be permitted. We'll give you a text basically of your zoning ordinance that shows exactly which uses will be permitted. We put that together for you, and then we'll also show the 1,000-foot buffer requirement, so you have that. Yeah, we're happy to do that if there's interest in allowing these uses within the city.
And I would agree with, Councilman Schultz, that there is, just based on the questions and that, we're out of caucus, so we can't take any action, but I do think that the sentiment is probably there, that there is some desire, so I would ask if your team could do some work like that for us, I'd appreciate it.
We're happy to do that, ma'am. Happy to do that. And in the meantime, this map and our memo and any information, the timeline, the one-pager is all available to you. So as you're reading through that, if you have any questions, please reach out. We're happy to answer, or if I don't know the answer, we'll get it from Sam Flynn, he's really great at responding, to be honest. Every question we've had, he's been amazing, so we're happy to get that information. So in the next maybe week or so, we'll put that together and we'll get it to City Administrator, Mr. Daly, and we'll go from there.
just as an FYI, we do have a council meeting on the 27th of this month, 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
So,
No, that's Memorial Day.
2 weeks from tomorrow.
2 weeks from tomorrow.
Before we close, I just have one question for Chief Hall. Do you have any concerns, safety or otherwise, of allowing this in the city?
It's hard.
Come on up.
As Mr. Baker said before, it's kind of virgin territory, so it's really hard for us to say. I don't have a say yes or no in it by any way, shape, or form. There's nothing saying that residents of the city aren't gonna go somewhere else and get it with their medical card anyway, whether they have it here or not.
Well, I just mean more dispelling myth and cultivating fact as to other police departments have had to deal with this across the nation. Is there, from what you've seen, heard, do you have any concerns at this time?
Not at this time, no.
Okay.
Actually, I do have a question for Director Reddy. Can Ohioans?
Come on back.
Sorry.
Chief, you were
You're
saying?
Chief, if you know you didn't do. Can Ohioans come to Albert Spencer?
Yes.
Okay.
They have to
Ohioans.
But they have to have their medical card.
So the card is federal and the licenses are state?
The card is still state. So the state of Kentucky will still issue a card for cannabis users.
Okay.
Now, somebody coming from Ohio can still do that, but I think there are some additional provisions.
There's some provisions of it, they have to basically be offered reciprocity, if I'm not mistaken, that they're gonna have to get approval through, basically get a duplicate card.
Okay.
In the state of Kentucky.
Okay, cool.
That's right.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna wait till you sit down.
Any other questions for the director?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. I know
Thank you.
you took time away from your family for this, and I truly appreciate that. Family time is very valuable, and so I certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
And good luck on this next tennis match.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Before we move on real quick, the cities that have listened to this presentation have also heard the other side. There's a gentleman named Dr. Michael Reeser that has discussed and presented to cities the benefits of medical cannabis. I would like to try to schedule him for the next meeting, if that's okay by this group. If you even want that, that's up to you guys. I think you should hear both sides, all the facts and all the information.
Absolutely, that's fine with me.
Okay.
So, and just to add, it sounds like, McGowan and I were at the,
Safety.
safety committee meeting last week, and it sounds like Villa Hills is not on board, so just. so
Their
everyone's aware.
administrative committee is going to recommend to their council now that they have even more limited spaces than we do.
I was gonna say that, I mean, they're,
And it's down on River Road.
For the cultivation.
Yes.
Not for this.
Director Reddy, thank you.
Is
Chief
there-
Hall, thank you.
is there a difference in conversation between dispensaries and cultivation in Villa Hills, or just
All the above.
all the, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Leave before we ask any more questions.
I think the only area that has the cultivation is around me.
Okay, City Administrator Daly, anything else from your report that we did not get to?
No, we are covered.
Very good. Any old business we need to cover? Next is the budget discussion. You all received copies of the budgets.
I could explain. In front of you, you'll have information regarding the police budget information. You will also have somewhat of a summary, kind of describing some of the ideas for that particular budget. The same goes for the fire authority budget. And then obviously the big one is City of Crescent Springs. You guys have all been emailed this information, as well now have a copy of it. And I will turn it back to the mayor.
So basically, in my mind, from a revenue standpoint, suggesting we do the compensating rate so that we bring in the same amount of money next year as we did this year on property taxes. We moved the park into this year instead of last year. So if you notice that there's excess in this year's revised budget, and we've taken some money out of reserves for next year's to cover the park and a couple other things that moved from last year to this year. Hoping for a few grants on litter and such to try to, it's a little bit of money here, a little bit of money. There's nothing really huge there. We've got some street resurfacing in there that we'd like to do. We're gonna try to, as we have for a couple other things in the past year, do an emergency request from the state to get some of that help, some help in paying for part of that. I mean, those are really the big items that I see as far as, where we're at on that. So you guys have had it for a week or so. Maybe there's not a lot of questions for us. Wanted to give everybody an opportunity to, talk freely and openly here about the budget if they have questions, and we can try to answer any questions.
Do you mind if I make some comments?
No.
Well, before, just let me just give an overarching kind of how this stuff works. Just so everybody understands, so the gray column is what our original budget from last year. The next one over, the teal one is where we're projected to end up the full 12 months. And then the green one is initial proposed, as of tonight, budget for next year. If you look at the teal column, 1, 2, 3, 4, on the 5th page, back to the net increase and decrease. It says 648 for this year, so we're projecting a surplus of about $650,000 for this current 12-month period. However, it's a little bit of fool's gold in the sense that that's on an accrual basis, not 100% cash. The biggest ticket items to remove out of that would be the ARPA funds, since that's cash we received in the past. It's about $75,000. So real, kind of think about it, net income would be like $575 for the year. Okay, that makes sense. We're kind of to that point. That's like high level, just easy, simple mechanics. Then to the mayor's point a little bit earlier, you see the bottom of page 1 in 4699 column at 444,000. It's a little bit of a misnomer of a tag. It really should say surplus from last year. So really, we're just instantly spending that surplus, essentially 442 of that 575 we just talked about is basically just, being washed out instantly, essentially from this year. So it's kind of like a year-over-year rollover, not essentially dipping into the general fund to come up with money. It's really just last year kind of shifting expenses, like the mayor said. And then from an expense perspective, outside police and fire, there was about $200,000, $200,000 for just overall road improvements. Just we'll figure out, who comes when, sort of what. We don't really have an order operation just yet. Or maybe a rough draft. There's a truck for about $109,000 that we talked about in the past a little bit. And then last but not least was the park improvement on the second to last page from the end. So those are the big ticket kind of year-over-year changes and how it kind of all comes together. So go ahead, Bill, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I was gonna say that thing about the transfer from other funds, like you alluded to. Basically, yeah, we're gonna spend a little bit more than what we have in revenue, which I think is fine. The amount we're spending that goes over revenue is less than the overage from this current year. A few other comments from the finance committee. We went through this in very fine detail. I think the revenue side is very conservative, as it should be. I think the possible exception to that would be the MRA emergency aid. We are budgeting to receive a decent chunk of that. We've had a lot of success with it in the past, so it's a reasonable thing to do. And on the expense side, of course, the big ticket items that jump up above the current year would be the park, $500,000 of park expenses, which of course is offset by $250,000 or $245,000 in grants. And then police and fire. We've talked extensively about fire going up. On the police side, that did go up more than I think we believed at the time the new interlocal agreement was determined. But I just read the memo that was provided in here, police budget information, explains why a lot of those costs have gone up so much.
And so the park being in there at 515, knowing that we've got half of that minus 15,000 coming,
It's offset in the revenue, so you can see it on the middle, 4440.
oh, okay, I see, anticipated, okay.
Yeah, but conversely, so that's where the 75 of the MRA money was. That's like what I call it was already the cash is already in order. This is new cash. So that's like it's real revenue. I'll call it 275. Unrelated, everything related to like branding stuff.
Jeff, do you have any questions or comments while you're sitting there?
Sure. Harris is on here, by the way.
Don't be giving away all the secrets now.
Sorry. I'll be gone. It'll be your problem.
Mark, are you confident and happy in this one? You feel that this is the best?
Well, I mean,
I'm gonna defer to the finance guy beyond,
yeah, we had such a surplus this year that we're just, I mean, the surprises, not really surprises, but we talked about fire, police, two thoughts, we brought up the truck in the past. And so, I mean, it's just pretty similar collection.
One thing we talked about at the finance committee was that the payroll gross receipts is much higher. It's gonna be $300,000 higher than the original
Oh, yeah,
budget.
so, yeah, from the budgeting, it's half of that, so at 575, half of it was the windfall or whatever, just getting hand in 6 months for the $250,000 detriment, so you take off 250 of that 575, and you're back down to like 275, right? That's not great.
Yeah.
Okay.
325.
Yeah, 325, sorry, 325. And then of that 325 that's left of the uptick, it was directly related to like last month's payroll when we just had a giant check, essentially. It was $300,000 more in the revenue. You can see that on the 4201, page 1 between the gray and the teal, 300 grand. So that was like another windfall. So literally half of that windfall came through.
And the thought is that that windfall in part has to do with work from home.
Yeah, so, and then you see the budget, so you can start saying we're not gonna do as much next year when probably.
In theory.
People could get sent back. to work.
Yeah, they could, but, I mean,
It's still conservative.
it's only gone up the last week.
Right.
My firm's hired a couple players over.
do we have a projection of, new houses that are coming online that would be paying into property taxes that didn't last year from new construction?
There's a year delay,
Yeah,
so I'm not sure, I don't have a number, but I know there's a year delay. If they're built this year, they won't be built this year, it'll be
Right.
later.
right, I just mean the new construction homes that closed in 2023.
I
Do
don't
we
know.
have any? Okay. I like the conservative side on revenue,
You read that, don't read that information in your July, and just with the other information?
That would be later than that.
Okay, yeah, it's.
Any other questions or comments? Any other business? Here now, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.